Revealed, the heartwarming video that exposed my daughter-in-law's incredible plot to steal $500K. Jim sat on the edge of his old recliner, the threads fraying beneath him, his heart racing as he clicked play on the video that appeared in his inbox just moments ago. This wasn't the kind of anniversary gift he expected his son Mark and his wife Emily to give themselves. No, it was a bombshell, a shocking insight into a world of betrayal layered beneath the shiny surface of their family dinners. Jim thought he knew Emily, the captivating woman who had swept his son off his feet. He had welcomed her with open arms, trusting her completely. But here, in this dimly lit living room, the truth was revealing itself in pixelated clarity. The screen flickered, showcasing Emily with her charm as she spun her web. Jim could see her smile bright, enchanting, but it felt like a knife twisting in his gut. The laughter that filled their home during family gatherings suddenly felt foreign. Mark and Emily had shared a life built on love, and Jim had cherished those moments, believing they were woven with honor and integrity. Now, they felt like a mirage. His pulse quickened, his worry transforming into a near panic. Jim had always instilled in his children that family values meant fighting for one another, no matter the odds. Now, he was faced with an agonizing choice. Should he protect his son from heartbreak or protect his family's reputation from disgrace? He envisioned the upcoming family dinner, joyous sharing of dishes, laughter echoing against the walls, but now it loomed as a battleground of conflicting emotions. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension simmered as the night of the community fundraiser arrived. The warmth of the small-town spirit wrapped around Jim like a fragile cocoon, while his heart felt heavy with unspoken secrets. Friends and neighbors filled the hall, their laughter ringing out as decorations sparkled under the soft lights. Mark was there, glowing with happiness next to Emily, who laughed effortlessly. Each giggle, each beaming smile, cut through Jim, deepening his turmoil. He felt trapped beneath the weight of unshakable doubt. As the evening wore on, Jim observed Emily, though her charming facade now had a sinister undercurrent. No longer was she just Mark's wife, she was the puppet master pulling strings that could unravel everything Jim loved. Just then, Emily took the stage to share her story, her upbringing, her struggles escaping poverty, and her desperation to succeed. It was powerful, and the crowd listened intently, compassion flickering in their eyes. But Jim's heart pounded louder in his chest. This was the emotional moment before the biggest confrontation he would ever face. Torn between love for his son and the pursuit of justice, he stood at a crossroads. Could familial loyalty withstand such a betrayal? Would uncovering Emily's true colors tear apart the fabric of their family or bring renewed strength? The fundraiser buzzed around him, but Jim remained caught in a storm of emotion, ready to make a choice that would redefine everything. What would come next? The room buzzed with applause as Emily wrapped up her heartfelt story. Her words floated through the air like confetti, enchanting the guests who were now fully absorbed in her narrative. As she smiled radiantly, Jim fought back the bitterness that burned within him. The applause echoed around him, drowning out the panic rising in his throat. He couldn't let this go on. Not here, not now. Mark beamed with pride, his eyes sparkling as they rested on Emily. He was oblivious to the web of deceit embroidered in her story. Jim's heart ached at the sight, realizing that his son was being ensnared by Emily's facade. The thought of their once golden family turned tarnished was unbearable. He needed proof, but he was no detective. He was a father caught in uncertainty. As the event continued, Jim slipped aside to the dimly lit hallway, the faint sounds of laughter echoing behind him. He needed to think. What were his options? Confronting Emily would mean exposing the video and shattering Mark's happiness. But allowing this deception to thrive felt like a betrayal, not just to his son but to the integrity of their family. He pulled out his phone, the cool screen against his palm only a reminder of the smoldering truth he had uncovered. Maybe it was time to speak to Mark privately, to gather courage and make a stand. This wasn't just about money, it was about trust, about protection. But how could he shatter his son's blissful illusion without causing irreparable damage? Just then, he felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Sarah, an old friend from the community who sensed the turmoil radiating from him. "Hey, Jim. You okay?" she asked, concern furrowing her brow. There was kindness in her eyes, but Jim couldn't form the words. "It's complicated, Sarah. The distress coiling in his stomach tightened as he wondered if he could confide in her. "Emily's not who she appears to be. I just found out something troubling and I don't know how to tell Mark." Her face tightened, the worry evident. "You have to be careful how you approach this. Family is everything." Jim nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. It wasn't just about the truth. These revelations could split their family apart. And yet it felt wrong, so wrong, to remain silent. She squeezed his shoulder gently, lending him strength. "Follow your heart, Jim. Just remember, there's always a way to protect Mark without tearing everything down." Taking a deep breath, Jim steadied himself. She was right. Maybe he didn't need the whole truth to start, just enough to plant a seed of doubt. He could nudge Mark towards discovery without a full-blown confrontation. As Jim prepared to return to the joyous crowd, the heartwarming spectacle turned clear in his mind. He needed a plan. Forcing a smile, he stepped back into the bright lights of the hall. Emily was mingling, basking in the warm glow of admiration. But it felt like a spotlight on her deception. "Mark," Jim called, waving his son over. Mark turned, his face lighting up with love and pride. But Jim's heart clenched, knowing the path he was about to take. "Dad, everything okay?" Mark asked, concern flashing in his eyes. "Can we talk? Just for a minute?" Mark nodded, sensing the gravity in his father's voice. Jim watched as Emily's smile faltered momentarily, but she quickly regained her composure. Taking a breath, Jim prepared to face the truth. But as he began to speak, he noticed a figure watching them from the corner of the room. It was a man he didn't recognize, but something in his gaze felt eerily familiar. What secrets did this stranger hold, and how would he fit into Jim's plan? Jim's heart raced as he locked eyes with the stranger across the room. The man's dark jacket and stern expression made him stand out against the festive backdrop. There was something unsettling about the way the stranger observed them, almost as if he were waiting for the perfect moment to intervene. "Dad?" Mark's voice pulled him back. "You were saying?" Jim shook off the distraction, forcing himself to focus on his son. Mark was still young, a bright light in an increasingly dim world. "It's about Emily," he began, trying to keep his voice steady. "I just think we should talk about her background a bit." Mark frowned, confusion washing over his features. "Dad, she just shared her story. It was inspiring." "Exactly." The urgency in Jim's tone startled him. "You need to understand that not everything is as it seems. There might be things you don't know." "What are you saying?" Mark crossed his arms defensively, the warmth in his eyes dimming. "Are you saying she's lying?" Jim felt the weight of his words. "I'm not accusing her, at least not yet. I just want you to keep your eyes open. Sometimes, people hide their true selves behind a mask." Mark hesitated, uncertainty flickering behind his facade of trust. "Dad, you don't know her like I do. She's amazing." As he watched his son cling to his conviction, the stranger's gaze returned to Jim, more intense. Jim wondered if he should reach out, find out what connection the man had to this web of deceit surrounding Emily. But revealing the truth too soon could push Mark away. "Let us just dig a little deeper, okay?" Jim said, shifting his approach. "No harm in being cautious. Can we promise to keep an open mind?" Mark's shoulders relaxed slightly, but he turned his face toward the crowd, scanning for Emily. "I guess so. But you're overreacting, Dad. You always tend to worry." Jim clenched his jaw, the struggle between protecting his son and his desire not to alienate him tearing at him. "I'll be worried until I'm certain, son. And what if your future is at stake?" Just then, the stranger stepped forward, cutting through the conversation like a knife. "Excuse me," he said, his voice low but commanding. "You don't know me, but I think we need to talk. It's important." Mark glanced at Jim, surprise flashing across his face. "Who are you?" The man held up a hand. "My name is Danny. I know things about Emily that you both need to hear." Jim glanced back at Mark, who still seemed skeptical. Jim felt a mix of panic and curiosity clawing at his insides. This was the moment they needed, a chance to sift through the layers of Emily's deception. But what if this stranger was just another thread in the tangled story? Before he could weigh his options, Danny continued. "She's not what you think. You need to listen." "Why should we trust you?" Mark demanded, arms crossing once more. "I have evidence," Danny said, his expression unwavering. "I can prove everything." Mark looked to Jim, uncertainty written all over his face. The air between them felt charged with unspoken fear and anticipation. Jim could sense that they were standing at a precipice, about to dive into a world where everything could change. His heart was pounding, the stakes higher than ever. They had to find out the truth, even if it meant shattering the blissful delusions they had been holding on to. "Let us hear him out," Jim said slowly. He could feel the doubt starting to twist Mark's expression. "Maybe we should listen to what he has to say." Mark hesitated, glancing between Jim and the man who might contain the answer to their turmoil. But would they really be ready for what lay ahead? As Danny opened his mouth to speak, Emily's laugh echoed through the hall, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just outside her view. Would they all be ready for the revelations that could come crashing down like so many falling stars? Jim's fingers tightened around his phone. The truth was out there, but at what cost? Danny's eyes shifted nervously, glancing around the crowded room as if he could sense the pressure pressing in on him. "What I'm about to tell you could change everything. You think you know her from her story, her kindness, the way she connects with people. But there are layers, realities hidden just beneath that surface. Trust me, it's not easy for me to say this, but Emily is entangled in something much darker." Mark shook his head, the light fading from his eyes as confusion took over. "How can you know all this? You don't even know her." "Right, I don't," Danny replied, a deep sigh escaping his lips. "But I know places she's been. I know what she's done. You need to understand that she's living a fabricated life that could explode at any moment. I can show you something that'll prove it." Jim felt a knot in his stomach. He didn't like where this was going. What kind of proof? Danny reached into his pocket, pulling out a small flash drive, the device glinting under the overhead lights. "I recorded a conversation. Emily inadvertently revealed more than she meant to. It's hard to hear, but it's the truth." "Is this a joke?" Mark glared at him, protective and scornful. The boy's faith seemed to harden into armor, and Jim feared any additional pressure would drive him further away. "Listen, I can't expect you to trust me just because I say it," Danny said, lowering his voice. "But I'm not here to hurt Emily. I'm here to warn you both. If you don't want to believe me, I'll respect that. But don't just dismiss it without considering the possibilities." The music in the background faded out, leaving an eerie silence. A weight rested heavily among them. Mark glanced at Jim, seeking guidance in his father's eyes as the decision hung between them. "Let us see it," Jim finally said, forcing the nervous tremor out of his voice. His heart pounded even faster now. Every second felt like an eternity. Mark's expression shifted, uncertainty threading through his features, but he nodded slowly. "Fine. But I can't believe she'd do anything wrong. Not Emily." Danny moved closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "You have to understand people have their reasons. Emily may have felt she had no choice." The stranger led them to a quieter corner of the hall. The clattering dishes and cheerful laughter of the party faded, replaced by the heaviness of anticipation. As they gathered around Danny's device, Jim's palms felt clammy. He was about to cross a line that might tear their family apart irrevocably. With a few clicks, Danny got the video to play. The faces on the screen flickered to life, revealing a conversation that sounded far too intimate, far too revealing. Emily's laughter rang through the ether, but that warmth quickly turned into something more serious. Members of the party busied themselves around them, oblivious to the storm brewing. This can't be right," Jim muttered, unease prickling at his core. The atmosphere pressed in on him, swaddled in denial. Mark's face went pale as Emily's cheerful voice dimmed and the weight of her words filled the air. It confirmed Jim's fears more than he could have imagined. Suddenly, Jim felt the ground shift beneath him. The reality of the moment crashed in, heavy and suffocating. This could destroy everything. "Why, Emily?" he whispered to himself, but could he confront her? Danny's firm gaze dropped to the screen, his jaw tense. "It's time you know everything has a cost, a price. Sometimes, love isn't free." The ache in Jim's chest churned with dread. A deep-rooted fear clawed at him. This revelation was more than he'd bargained for. As the video ended and silence settled heavily around them, Jim faced his son, who looked lost in a maze of betrayal and disbelief. What would happen next? Would they still trust Emily after this? "This can't be the end," Mark breathed, the colors draining from his face. Jim had anticipated this moment, but now that it was here, he wasn't sure they could handle the truth, especially if it meant losing a part of their family. What had they stepped into? And just then, as Mark's voice trembled with uncertainty, a familiar figure emerged from the crowd. Emily, laughter ringing through the air, blissfully unaware of the cracks forming within their world. Would they confront her? Would truth or love prevail? Jim felt his breath hitch in his throat as Emily approached, radiating the vibrant energy that had drawn them all to her in the first place. She was everything they'd always loved: warm, engaging, the life of the party. But now, standing next to Mark and Danny, her laughter felt like a knife twisting in Jim's gut. "Hey, you three!" Emily beamed at them, her eyes sparkling with joy. "What are you talking about over here? You look like you've seen a ghost." Mark's body tensed, and Jim could barely meet her gaze. The cheerful facade felt like a cruel mask. Did she have any idea what lay in the balance? "Just catching up," Mark managed to say, though his voice wavered. Emily's smile faltered slightly but quickly returned as she tried to look into Jim's eyes. "Come on, let us enjoy the night. No need to look so serious." Jim exchanged glances with Danny, who was still recovering from the gravity of their shared discovery. He could feel the tension crackling like static in the air. "Emily," he finally began, battling the instinct to shield her from the hurtful truth. "Can we talk for a moment?" The question hung heavy between them, and her smile dimmed, replaced by a flicker of concern. "Sure. What's up?" "Maybe not here," he said, glancing anxiously around the crowded hall, feeling like eyes were boring into him from every corner. With the laughter of the party buzzing around them, it seemed almost surreal that the world could keep spinning when they faced such an emotional storm. Emily nodded, her brow creasing. "Okay. Let us step outside." As they moved away from the festive atmosphere, the cool night air enveloped them. It was supposed to feel refreshing, but instead, the chill seeped into Jim's bones, a premonition of what was to come. Mark hung back, casting worried glances in their direction. "I'll be right here if you need me," he called out before disappearing into the vibrant crowd. Jim led Emily to a quiet spot behind a cluster of trees, shadows dancing under the dim light of the party. The murmurs of laughter echoed like a distant memory. It felt as if they were standing on the precipice of something enormous. "Emily," he started, swallowing hard. "We need to talk about some things I wish I didn't have to bring up." Her expression shifted, the carefree attitude dropping away, replaced by a serious concern. "Is everything okay?" "No," Jim said, voice shaking. He took a deep breath, holding on to his composure with desperate fingers. "I saw something. Something that changes everything." "Changes what?" Her voice was tight, eyes narrowing in confusion. "The conversation Danny recorded," he said, forcing the words out. "You were saying things that suggest you're involved in something dangerous." Her face fell, color draining as she recoiled slightly, a flash of fear crossing her features. "What do you mean?" "Emily, we care about you. But we need the truth." Silence fell between them, thick and uncomfortable, as the words lingered. Emily's breath quickened, and for a moment, Jim felt as though he were staring at a stranger, this bright young woman suddenly cloaked in shadows he couldn't quite understand. I don't know what Danny told you," she whispered, shakily. "But I'm not involved in anything dangerous." But Jim stammered, feeling a war within himself as he questioned her sincerity. "The things you said, it didn't sound right." And then he saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes, a flash of what might be guilt. She swallowed hard and took a step back, shaking her head. "You have to believe me. I was just trying to protect everyone," she pleaded. "You don't understand," but all he could think of was the rift forming between them. The two worlds, brief moments of laughter and deep trust, were on the verge of collapse. "Protect us? By living a lie?" Jim asked, voice rising. Emily looked genuinely pained, her expression so conflicted that it hurt him to witness. "Please," she fought back tears, "just give me a chance to explain." But Jim couldn't shake the gnawing sense of betrayal. Did he really know this person, or had he been fooled all along? As he struggled with his thoughts, a sharp sound from the party interrupted. It was a scream, sudden and piercing. They both jolted, a share of horror evident on their faces. "What was that?" Emily gasped, fear flooding her features as she clasped her hands to her mouth. In that moment, all troubles fell away as a new wave of urgency swept over them. What had just happened? What had they stumbled into? With his heart racing, Jim took Emily's arm. "We have to find out what is going on," he urged, knowing that whatever lay ahead was about to change everything. As they rushed back toward the party, Jim couldn't shake the feeling that they were no longer just looking for answers. They were now in the middle of something much bigger than any of them could have ever anticipated. What if the truth would shove them into a darkness they hadn't seen coming? As Jim and Emily rushed back toward the main gathering, the vibrant atmosphere of the party had shifted dramatically. The laughter had vanished, replaced by hushed whispers and anxious murmurs. Flashes of uncertainty flickered in Jim's chest. What could have caused that scream? What were they walking into? Emerging from behind the trees, they found the crowd gathering near the entrance. Faces twisted in confusion, some were already beginning to panic. Jim's eyes scanned the crowd for Mark and Danny, desperate to find some sense of stability amid the chaos. "Where's everyone?" Emily asked, looking around as unease settled deeper within her. Jim nodded toward a small group off to the side where Mark stood, a worried expression painted across his features. In that moment, something heavy settled in Jim's stomach. The way Mark's brow furrowed, the way he gestured with his hands, it all felt like the calm before a storm. "What is going on?" Jim asked as they approached. Mark's gaze darted anxiously to Emily. "Did you hear that scream?" Emily's voice trembled slightly as she replied, "Yeah, we heard it." "Do you know what happened?" Before Mark could respond, Danny broke through the throng, looking frazzled. "There's been an accident," he said breathlessly. "Someone got hurt." The crowd began shifting as people whispered among themselves. Panic started to build. Was it an accident or something more sinister? Jim felt his heart race even faster. "Is it serious?" Emily said, her eyes wide with worry. Danny shook his head, trying to regain his composure. "I don't know. But I think they're calling for help." Just then, the sound of sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder. Emily stepped closer to Jim, her hand clutching his arm like a lifeline. They were spiraling further into something dark, and the weight of it pressed down on him. They needed to know what was truly happening. "Let us get closer," Jim suggested, and as they moved through the crowd, the uncertainty settled around everything like a thick fog. Then suddenly, they spotted a flash of red. The blinking lights of emergency vehicles illuminated the scene as they pulled into the driveway. A knot twisted tighter in Jim's stomach. "It's all happening too fast," he murmured to Emily, who looked up at him, fear etched across her face. The group of onlookers parted as paramedics rushed in, their faces grim and focused. Each step they took sent tremors through Jim's heart. Who was hurt? And why, on what was supposed to be a joyous evening, had everything gone so wrong? "Let us stay together," Mark urged, trying to maintain a semblance of calm. But it was becoming increasingly clear that whatever had happened, it was veering them toward a whirlwind of complications. As paramedics lifted a stretcher from the back of their vehicle, the crowd gasped. The figure on the gurney was obscured under a blanket, but Jim's mind spun wildly, trying to grasp the implications of it all. Suddenly, Emily pulled away from him, moving closer to the stretcher with an urgency that took Jim by surprise. "Wait. Is that someone I know?" "Emily. Don't." Jim shouted after her, but she was lost in her own panic, drawing nearer to the unfolding chaos. Onlookers gasped. A voice rose, sharper than the others, filled with dread and disbelief. "It's Ryan. My God. What happened?" Jim's heart dropped. Ryan? It was Emily's brother. The gravity of the situation crashed over them, and in an instant, everything changed. "Emily. Come back." Jim yelled as she pushed through the crowd, reaching for a glimpse of her brother. Her face turned wild with desperation. "I need to see him." As the sirens wailed, everything spiraled. Feelings of dread mingled with confusion, and amid it all, Jim felt a sense of urgency that transcended just the night's events. "Emily, please." Jim shouted, his own voice trembling. "We have to stick together. There's too much we don't know." But all he could see was Emily's face filled with fear. It was a moment where the truth hung tantalizingly close, but at that moment, all that mattered was the unknown. What had actually happened to Ryan, and what was the cost of the secrets buried beneath the night's facade? As the crowd swirled around them, Jim felt that a new reality was unfolding, one full of urgency and danger, just waiting to be unveiled. Would they survive the night's revelations together, or would the truth tear them apart? Jim's pulse thundered in his ears, drowning out the chaos of the night. He desperately searched the sea of terrified faces, but all he could see was Emily, her expression caught between panic and determination. As she slipped through the crowd, Jim felt a surge of helplessness wash over him. "Emily, wait," he called out again, pushing against the bodies packed around him. The smell of sweat and fear pressed tight around them. Everyone seemed to hold their breath, the air thick with anticipation. Mark reached out, grabbing Jim's arm. "We need to follow her. We can't let her go alone." Jim nodded, steeling himself. They pushed forward, the crowd reluctantly parting. Emily was almost at the front, her hands trembling as she reached for the stretcher. "Ryan. Please." She felt her voice catch. Each syllable broke like glass, echoed by the murmurs of the crowd. Her brother lay beneath the blanket, surrounded by medics who worked quickly, their faces set in grim lines. "Back up, please," a paramedic said sharply, and Jim felt a wave of frustration surge through him. Did they really think they could control this chaos? "Emily." Jim managed to close the gap, grasping her arm. "You can't go any closer." She turned to him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "What if he's hurt? I can't just stand here." Jim's heart cracked open at the sight of her fear. He saw a glimpse of vulnerability in her gaze, the kind that needed reassurance. "I know. But they're trying to help him. We need to give them space." Just as he finished, a paramedic turned toward them, his face tense. "We need more light over here." A flicker of hope ignited in Emily's chest, and she whispered, "That means he's alive." But the urgency in the paramedic's voice raised the stakes. As they moved the gurney, Jim felt his stomach churn. He wondered if they could really save Ryan, or if the worst was yet to come. Mark stepped up beside him, his voice tight. "We need a way to find out more." We can't just stand here. Suddenly, a familiar figure emerged from the crowd. Sarah, Ryan's girlfriend. Her face was pale, eyes wider than ever. What happened? I was with him 5 minutes ago. Emily turned with desperation. You know him. What happened? Sarah shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. I don't know, we were just hanging out. Then there was a loud noise, and he fell. The way she spoke felt like ice water in Jim's veins. What kind of noise? I don't know. A crash? I can't remember. Jim felt the world begin to spiral. What had happened? A voice rang out from the crowd again, somewhere behind them. Someone saw it happen. They said he was trying to fix the sound system. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. An accident while trying to make the party better. Was it a simple mistake? Or something more reckless? Emily's grip on Jim tightened. He was just trying to help. Jim knew this moment could mark a shift, everything could change based on what Ryan had done or what had happened around him. The tension mounting felt like a coiled spring about to snap. Emily, he said softly, whatever happens, I'm with you. Thank you, she whispered, another tear slipping down her cheek. The ambulance doors swung shut, and a feeling of finality began to settle in. As if they were closing the door not just on Ryan, but on an entire night turned upside down. In that moment, all Jim could do was hold on to Emily, both of them caught in the terrifying limbo between hope and fear. And then, like something straight out of a horror movie, a voice sliced through the air, gripping their attention. Wait. He didn't fall. He was pushed. The crowd fell silent. A horrified murmur rippled, and Jim's heart sank. Who would push him? Now there was a dark shadow looming over everything, and Jim knew one thing for sure. They were racing against time to uncover the truth and protect the ones they loved before it was too late. The air grew thick with whispers, each one more chilling than the last. Jim felt his heart race at the weight of the accusation. He turned to Emily, searching her face for a sign of clarity amidst the uncertainty. Her eyes were wide, reflecting the wave of shock that swept through the crowd. Pushed. She echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. Who said that? Mark demanded, scanning the sea of faces. We need to talk to them. As if on cue, the crowd began to part, revealing a young man, his face flushed and hands trembling. I saw it happen, he stammered, glancing nervously at the paramedics, who continued their serious work nearby. I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt. Wait, what do you mean? Jim stepped closer, trying to keep his voice steady. What did you see? The boy shifted, clearly feeling the weight of everyone's gaze. Ryan was up there, trying to fix the speakers, and I think someone pushed him. The words hung heavy, each syllable slicing through the frail fabric of hope Emily clung to. Why would anyone do that? She breathed, disbelief flaring in her eyes. Jim clenched his fists, feeling anger bubble beneath the surface. What kind of sick person would do that? The young man shrugged, overwhelmed with fear. I don't know. It was all so chaotic, and I didn't see who it was. But it happened so fast. One moment he was on the platform, and then Emily, stay back, Mark urged gently, but she barely registered his words. Her mind raced, piecing together bits of information like a puzzle she was desperately trying to complete. Who were you with? Emily asked, her voice trembling. Did anyone else see? The boy nodded slowly. A couple friends were there, and, maybe Sarah? She was close. Emily turned to Sarah, who stood frozen, her face pale. Did you see anything? Sarah shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. No. I was just talking to Ryan before it happened. I didn't think what? Jim interjected, impatience tinging his tone. That someone could be a monster? Stop. Emily shouted, frustration boiling over. This isn't helping. Silence fell over them, the reality of the situation crashing down like a heavy weight. The fear and uncertainty that engulfed them felt unrelenting. Jim put a comforting arm around Emily, wishing he could shield her from all the hurt in the world. "We need to find out who did this," he said softly, his eyes locked with hers. "We owe it to Ryan." Emily nodded, determination rising within her. "I want to let him down. We need to dig deeper." Just then, a commotion erupted on the far side of the crowd. People parted as a figure pushed through an older man with a stern expression. Jim recognized him from the building's board, a notorious stickler for the rules. "What is going on here?" he barked, glaring at the gathered crowd. "This is a private event." "Someone's hurt," Mark shouted back, a flash of anger smoldering in his eyes. "And it's not just an accident." The man's gaze hardened, but there was a flicker of concern behind his imposing facade. "What do you mean?" "Ryan," Emily spoke up, her voice steady now. "Someone pushed him. We need to know who was responsible." The man's expression shifted. "I heard the commotion. This wasn't just bad luck." As the crowd began murmuring again, Jim realized urgency exuded from every corner. They were no longer just bystanders, they were now caught in a web of anger, fear, and dark suspicion. "This isn't over," he stated firmly, looking at Emily. "We need answers." "What if it's worse than we think?" she whispered, fear flickering across her features once more. And at that moment, a chilling thought settled in Jim's gut. What if Ryan wasn't the only one in danger? What if this was just the beginning of something much more sinister? The race for the truth had begun, and it was a race they couldn't afford to lose. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she scanned the crowd, anxiety and determination swirling within her. She knew they had to act fast, but where to start? The murmurs grew louder, wrestling for attention, but her mind was filled with Ryan's face, his laughter echoing in her thoughts. Pushed. Someone had intentionally hurt him. She couldn't let that go unanswered. "Jim, we need to find out who else was up there," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "There have to be more witnesses. If someone pushed him, they must have seen something." Jim nodded, resolve etched on his features. "Let us split up," he suggested. "You and Mark gather information from anyone who was close by. I'll check with the paramedics and the staff. Someone has to know what really happened." Mark nodded. "Okay, let us move." His unsaid questions hung heavily in the air, fear and confusion mingling. They sprang into action, each focused on uncovering the truth for Ryan. Emily turned her attention back to the crowd, mustering her courage. "If anyone saw something, please come forward," she called out, her voice rising above the chaos. Faces turned towards her, some sympathetic, some hard with suspicion. "You might have the piece we need to help him." As people began to gravitate toward her, Emily felt a prickling of hope. Maybe someone would step up. "Hey, I heard you shout about witnesses," a voice behind her caught her off guard. It was Sarah again, nervously twisting her hair. I remember seeing a tall guy lurking near the stage. He didn't belong there." "Did you see his face?" Jim asked as he turned back, trying to keep his breathing even. He nodded toward Sparks as he joined them, only making things feel more urgent. "Do you remember anything else?" Sarah shook her head, her voice trembling. "No, I didn't think anything of it at the time. I was so focused on Ryan, and then, everything changed in a second." Tears welled up in her eyes. Emily walked closer, her heart aching. "You did your best, Sarah. Just knowing you saw something is a big step. We can figure this out together." "I hope so," Sarah murmured, but doubt lingered in her tone. Suddenly, a frantic shout cut through the conversations. "Back up!" a paramedic yelled, rushing toward the scene with urgency. Flashes of red and blue lights illuminated their faces as more officials arrived. "What's happening?" Mark asked, tense. "There's been another incident," the paramedic replied, breath sharp with anxiety. "We need to maintain order. Get people away from the area." Panic rippled through the crowd, and Emily's stomach twisted with dread. What does that mean? She could already feel a dark cloud hanging over them, a sense that danger wasn't just in the past, it was here. Maybe it's Ryan, it can't be, she whispered, her voice breaking. She locked eyes with Jim, searching for comfort. But Jim's gaze had shifted beyond her. No, it can't be, he murmured, realizing what was at stake. Suddenly, he broke into a sprint towards the paramedics. What happened? Tell me now. Emily's heart dropped as she followed behind him, dread clinging to her with every frantic step. An officer stepped forward, eyes scanning the crowd as if trying to catch a glimpse of the unknown threat. She grabbed Jim's arm. What if it's more than just Ryan? What if they're targeting someone else? But before he could answer, the crowd gasped collectively, and Emily turned to see the tall figure from Sarah's description slip through the crowd. Panic clutched at her heart as he darted away. After him! Jim shouted, and without thinking, they plunged forward, adrenaline charging their steps. Each pound of her heart echoed louder. They had to catch him before it was too late. As they pushed through the disarray of bodies, confusion turned to urgency. What didn't they know? Who was that? Mark yelled, breathless. Emily's pulse raced, the tension heavy around them. A figure, a shadow of malevolence only just out of reach. In that moment, she realized everything they thought they knew was about to change. What truths could they uncover in the depths of this chaos? And what might they lose along the way? Emily's heart hammered in her chest as they pursued the shadowy figure weaving through the crowd. Jim shouted for everyone to clear a path, his voice booming over the rising tide of confusion. Every step felt like a leap into the unknown, an urgency propelling them forward. The air was thick with anticipation and fear, and Emily felt a mix of dread and resolve. Who the hell is that? Mark gasped, trailing just behind them. His voice trembled, filled with a mix of anxiety and determination. Emily's mind raced. The looming questions clawed inside her, a question left unanswered for too long now. Who was this person? And why were they running? Keep going. We can't lose him. Jim shouted, his long strides quickening. The crowd swelled around them, a chaotic sea of faces, unseeing, uncaring. But Emily's focus remained locked on the mysterious figure, their silhouette flickering in and out of view. Every instinct screamed at her to catch him. She had to find out what secrets he held. As they pushed through, Emily felt herself getting closer. The thrill of the chase awakened something inside her, igniting courage where uncertainty once resided. She couldn't let fear dictate her next move. She wouldn't let Ryan's story end this way. Suddenly, the figure turned, darting into a narrow alleyway that cut between two buildings. Without hesitation, Jim veered toward the opening. Slipping through the throng of onlookers, Emily followed him and Mark frantically behind her. The stillness of the alley contrasted sharply against the chaos behind them. The distant sirens blared, a somber reminder of the hurt unfolding not just within the walls of the party, but perhaps all around them. The figure paused, glancing over their shoulder, and Emily saw fear etched across their features. Whoever they were seemed to realize the chase had brought them to a dead end. Stop! Jim yelled as they loomed closer, his voice insistent, unwavering. We need to talk. Talk. The figure, now visible in the dim light, turned to face them, eyes wide. It was a boy barely older than Mark. You don't want to know what I know. He looked panicked, eyes darting toward the narrow street. Then tell us. Emily urged. Her heart thudded against her ribcage as the boy's face morphed from fear to defiance. What do you know about Ryan? Ryan? The boy repeated, as if he hadn't expected them to mention him. A flicker of hesitation passed over his face, and in that moment, Emily sensed an opening. Yes. We know someone hurt him. You were there. Jim pressed, stepping closer, trying to draw out the truth. You have to help us. They'll come after me. The boy trembled, casting glances toward the alley's entrance as if he feared the entire world might collapse around him. Who will? Emily asked, desperation clawing at her throat. We can protect you. But you need to tell us what you know. The boy hesitated, his resolve faltering. Finally, he took a deep breath, his shoulders slumping. I saw the whole thing. There was a fight, then someone pushed Ryan. I didn't mean to let it happen. I thought it was just a joke at first. Who pushed him? Mark demanded, the frustration in his voice palpable. We need names. What did you see? There were two guys, the boy stammered, glancing nervously at the alley entrance again. They were messing around, but then they got serious. I was just trying to keep out of it. I never thought someone would get hurt. Emily felt a wave of anger swell within her. Ryan didn't deserve this. You knew something was wrong. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Because I was scared. He cried, tears glistening in his eyes. I thought I'd be next. Just leave me alone. No. Jim stepped forward, firm in his stance. You have to stand with us if you want to do right by Ryan. This isn't over. You can't let fear control you. You're not alone. The boy's expression flickered, uncertainty battling with guilt. I am not sure who pushed him, but I saw the whole thing. 1 minute they were laughing, the next he trailed off, the weight of his words hanging in the air as if they were all teetering on a precipice of anguish. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted, voices began to echo in the alley. The familiar sounds of chaos echoed up ahead, and the boy's panic resurfaced. You can't be here when they come. Please, you don't understand what you're doing. We need to know what to tell the police. They can help. Emily insisted, trying to escape the whirlwind of fear that encircled them. I can't, the boy whispered, voice trembling again. Just tell them it was an accident. I don't want anyone else hurt. Jim stepped closer, narrowing his eyes. Look at us. Ryan is hurt. We won't let it slide. We'll find out the truth, one way or another. In that moment, just as their voices heightened with urgency, the alleyway filled with shadows. They weren't safe here any longer. We need to go now. Mark urged, fear edging his words. Jim nodded, realizing now was their only chance to regroup. Fine, Jim said to the boy. We'll talk later. But remember, fear cannot win. He turned, leading Emily and Mark back through the alley's narrow passage, hearts pounding beneath the weight of uncertainty. As they emerged back into the main street, the commotion from the party swirled in a frenzy around them. But the energy was shifting. With each passing moment, it felt like the stakes climbed skywards. They were racing against time, caught in a tumultuous cycle of emotion and desperation. Did you hear that? Emily glanced back at Jim and Mark. We need to find more people. If there were others involved, Mark nodded, eyes bright with determination. We can't let Ryan's sacrifice be in vain. Together we will uncover the truth, Jim promised. And we will fight for Ryan. As the three of them stepped back into the fray of the party, they could almost feel the resolve surge within them, a new light, a shared purpose binding their hearts. They would get to the bottom of this, and whatever darkness lay ahead, they would confront it as family. United, they would stand in a world where truths felt buried deeper by the second. They chose to fight, to resist the shadows closing in around them. Because for every moment lost, every second passed beneath the weight of uncertainty, they would not falter. And even amidst the clamor of dread, Emily felt a flicker of hope reignite within. Together, they would bring clarity to the night, no matter the cost, and as they moved forward, hands clasped together, their hearts beat as one determined to find the light even in a night shrouded with darkness. They wouldn't let fear dictate their fate. They wouldn't stop until every secret was revealed. Now was the time for action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. This is the moment to show your support. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Only true fans know how important it is to support the channel through these actions.